That chair is in violation of the bylaws. I am authorized to remove it.
You cannot be serious. Get your hands off my property right now.
I woke up to the scrape of metal on concrete and a bright white flash through my blinds like a cop car was parked in my living room. Cold air hit my face when I yanked the door open, and the smell of wet asphalt and exhaust rushed in from the parking lot. My brand new porch chair was halfway down the walkway, strapped to a dolly next to an orange ticket. Our HOA president, Karen, stood there in a fluffy robe at 6:15 a.m., clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon. She pointed at me with her pen and said in this fake calm voice that the chair was non-compliant under exterior furnishing guidelines. Behind her, a pickup idled with hazard lights blinking like I was in trouble with the law over a chair. In that moment, the sentence popped into my head like a headline: Karen seized my porch chair citing 1974 rules, too bad I am the landlord. That was the fight. Not just over a chair, but over who actually had power here. The crazy part? I own this building. I bought it last year as an investment and moved into one of the downstairs units while renting the others out. The HOA covers the shared grounds and the parking lot, but somehow Karen acts like she owns the whole street. She waved this crumpled photocopy that looked older than both of us and said the bylaws forbid metal patio furniture visible from the street. I tried to stay calm. I asked her when that rule was last updated and why my neighbors had plastic flamingos and porch rugs, but my one gray chair was a crisis. She narrowed her eyes and told me the board had already voted, and that further discussion would be considered harassment. When I turned to the neighbor across the hall for backup, he froze in his doorway like a deer in headlights, then slowly closed it. Later that week, I found 3 noise complaint notices and 1 warning for unauthorized tenant activity in my mailbox. Timeline item 1 April 5 at 4:27 a.m. False trespass call. A security guard had knocked on my door because someone reported a stranger lurking. The stranger was me, carrying groceries. That was my line in the sand. I told myself I would stay lawful, stay calm, and use every proper channel I could find. But I was done letting a clipboard bully run my own building. I started digging. I pulled out my purchase file, called my property insurance, and logged into the county website to check how our HOA was registered. In the evenings, with the smell of coffee filling my little kitchen, I read every boring line of the covenants. Patterns of false reports can be prosecuted. That one sentence from a legal blog stuck in my mind like a hook. At the city records office, the clerk slid a thick folder across the counter. The file landed with 63 pages. Budgets, meeting notes, complaints, even old photos. Karen's name was all over it like graffiti. On my dining table, I turned into a one-man investigation. I lined up photos, emails, and call logs in a binder. There were 7 formal complaints filed by Karen about me in less than 2 months. All tiny things. My porch light was too bright. My car was parked 1 inch over a faded line on May 3, 2024 at 9:00 p.m. My tenant's kid laughed too loud in the walkway. But there were also things she didn't expect anyone to see. In the minutes from a meeting, she bragged about scaring off renters she didn't like. In another, she wrote that the 1974 outdoor furniture rule was handy for keeping standards up, even though the city had updated building codes 3 times since then. The county documents showed the HOA never properly recorded the newer amendments that softened those rules. So I set the trap, very politely. As the legal owner, I requested a special meeting with the Master Association and the property management company. That right was buried in the covenants, but it was there. I sent the email at 10:15 a.m. with a simple subject line: review of enforcement practices and outdated rules. I copied the city's neighborhood compliance officer and attached my binder index. When the meeting day came, I put on a plain blue shirt, grabbed my binder, and walked across the lot. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass. My porch sat empty, a sad rectangle where the chair had been. Neighbors clustered near the community room door, phones already in their hands. I could hear someone whisper, "This is about the chair thing, right?" Inside, Karen sat at the head of the table, pearls on, lips tight. The property manager was on one side, the city officer on the other, and the HOA's attorney sat with a laptop open. I stayed polite. I started with the timeline. April 5th at 4:27 a.m. false trespass call. April 14th 8:32 p.m. noise complaint while I was out of town. May 3rd chair seizure based on 1974 rules not recorded in current filings. I slid the city records across the table. The attorney frowned. The officer flipped pages, then looked up and asked why selective rules were used on just one resident when other porches clearly broke the same standards. Someone near the back snorted, trying not to laugh. Phones came up. Red recording lights blinked. Then came the flip. The city officer cleared his throat and said, very plain, that unrecorded or outdated rules could not be enforced in ways that target a single person. The attorney added that HOA boards have a duty of fair and consistent enforcement, and that using security or police on shaky grounds could expose them to liability. You could see the color drain from Karen's face. The property manager turned to me and asked, just to confirm, you are the titled owner of units 1 through 4? I nodded and placed my deed copy on the table. A neighbor actually gasped. Another whispered, wait, he's the landlord? The manager announced that all fines against me and my tenants were void, totaling $450, and that the chair seizure was unauthorized. Public reaction hit fast. One neighbor in the back muttered, all this over a chair, and people laughed out loud. The video of Karen sitting there, speechless, started spreading in our community group that same evening. Someone added a caption, when you forget the guy you're bullying owns the building. Comments rolled in. People shared their own stories. Online, folks pointed out the simple law the officer had quoted and added their own stories of petty HOAs. The board held a vote right there, on camera. By a clear majority, they removed Karen as president, barred her from any enforcement role, and ordered a full review of every complaint she had filed in the past year. The officer ended it by reminding the room that false or biased reports could be investigated further. The aftermath felt like the first warm day after a long storm. A week later, the property manager dropped off my porch chair, freshly cleaned, with a written apology from the board. Karen kept her unit, but she had to attend training on fair housing and was banned from contacting residents about rules for 5 years. The HOA posted new guidelines, in plain language, about respectful enforcement. On Saturday mornings now, I sit in that same chair with a mug of coffee, watching kids chalk little suns and hearts on the sidewalk. My neighbor from across the hall finally relaxed enough to knock and say, I'm glad you stood up to her. It feels lighter here now. Please follow for more HOA showdowns like this. Do you think she got what she deserves? Comment below.